Could it be you calling me down? My foolish heart turns at the stars.
Welcome to another episode of the Sports Mecca podcast with my colleague Sam Hengeli. I'm your host, Stephen Abrams. Today, we're speaking with former Texas Longhorns and overseas guard, AJ Abrams. AJ, Sam and I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk. Hopefully you have some really good stories tonight, but Sam and I have been kind of eager to talk to you for the past couple of weeks. I've been hitting Sam up and telling him, like, man, we're going to get AJ Abrams on, but we're very, very appreciative of you of coming on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys having me. I know it's kind of hit or miss. I know my Instagram responses are not the best, so I appreciate you guys working with me a little bit.
AJ, before we kind of get into your overseas career, if you want to just talk a little bit about what you're doing now. Currently, you're the owner of Supreme One Realty. Is that correct?
Yeah. I started this real estate company a little over. Actually, we're going on 3 years now. So I've been in real estate for about 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I get that question a lot. It's like, okay, well, you went from basketball to real estate. What's the correlation, or what made you do that? I left the game on my terms. I didn't get hurt or anything like that. I just figured it was time to do something else. And people had talked to me about doing some things, and I was like, kind of wrote them off. And then my sister kind of brought to my attention that I should get my real estate license. And again, the first thing I thought was like, no, I don't want to be a sleazy car salesman or used car salesman. But and that was just ignorance on my part, because I didn't know a lot about the industry, didn't know a lot about it. So I started looking into it. My last year I was playing, kind of put my ducks in a row as far as what I wanted to do. And, kind of figured out that it was literally just like sports. You get out what you put into it. And, those that do that are the ones are the successful realtors and have the successful brokerages. And, like I said, been doing it for about 8 years now. It's a very rewarding business, very, very tough business. Everybody kind of thinks they're a realtor or they're in real estate until they actually get into it and see all the ins and outs and how tough it is to actually, build a successful real estate practice. And that's what was intriguing to me about it, simply because it's more so of, all right, this is still a competitive game. How can I be better than the next person? But at the same time, I'm still getting to help a ton of people, whether it's the agents that are in my company or, my clients that I've been able to help that probably didn't even think that they could buy a house, and I was able to help them and educate them on that process. And then, of course, when you're helping sellers, achieve their goal and accomplish what real estate really is, which is an investment and, building generational wealth for themselves.
Yeah. Have you noticed, since you've been there for 8 years, have you noticed a trend of maybe former athletes in various sports, maybe after their playing career is over, go that real estate route?
I've seen it, honestly, bro. I've seen it more on the commercial side. So if I dive more into the residential side, I have a commercial agent, but I don't have any liking of commercial real estate whatsoever, because I'm more of the relationship type. I want to make sure that, I get to see the joy on people's faces when they either sell or buy a house. And on the commercial side, it's, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. And I think, on the athlete side, that's kind of where they're being drawn to, because it's kind of cut and dry, do the deal, move on to the next. And so for the people that I know that have jumped into it, they've gone on more of the commercial side of things, which, again, nothing wrong with that. It's just what fits your personality and what kind of fits what you're looking to do for your next career after sports. For me, it was, I like, I sound real weak when I say this, but whatever. I like closure, I like to see the beginning, middle, and the end. And with the commercial, it's more so of, all right, here it is, and we're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I know you've been there 8 years, and I'm sure you've done a really good job. But you did spend, I think it was 3 or 4 years overseas playing right after you graduated from Texas.
Yeah.
I know you.
So right after I went, I was over in my first year was in Greece, and then I went to Italy, and then I was in the Czech Republic for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. We've had a few former college basketball players on that did play overseas, that talked a little bit about like what life is like playing overseas basketball. Can you kind of maybe get into detail about like how that is, and maybe how shocked you were, playing from playing in the United States for your entire life and then playing, a different country or different countries?
Yeah, for sure. So it's if any other person tells you that they're not shell shocked, they're lying. I'll be honest with you when I say that. And me personally, you got to think about it. I was coming from, air quotes, the University of Texas. Everything was pretty much spoon fed to us. Whenever we traveled, we drive the bus right up to the plane. Food is already laid out for us. We know you can literally smell it as you're walking on. So you get excited. You're like, oh, we got steak tonight or we got lobster tonight. Whatever the case is, you're getting fed something really good, flying right to the, wherever you're going, hopping on the bus right to the airport. Right to the hotel. The biggest shock for me when I got over there wasn't even really basketball related. It was the travel. Because, again, you're spoon-fed over in college. And I'm not saying it's just at the University of Texas. I'm pretty sure it's at every program. You got managers that carry your bags for you. They load the plane. They load the bus. They take the bag up to your room, or they take it off the bus so you can get it, just, walk it up to your room. And, when I got over to Europe, when we started traveling, we're like on 10, 11-hour bus rides. If we did fly, when I got to Czech, when we went to Italy and Czech, we started flying a little more. But it was, walking through the airport, having delays, just kind of waiting for the plane. We're on the plane with other people. I'm like, what the hell is this? Why are we not on a private plane driving to the game, driving to the airport? Riding to the airport or whatever, and hopping right on the plane. So that was the biggest shocker for me, kind of getting going. It's like, all right, I feel like more of a professional in college from a travel standpoint, as opposed to, now getting paid to do this and having to walk through an airport. I know it sounds like super bougie and super like, oh my God, but that was kind of the reality that we had, coming from a major university going over to Europe, which again, you're getting paid to play basketball, which is awesome. But nobody really thinks about the other thing that goes along with it to kind of make you feel as if you're a professional or not.
I got a question relating to kind of a little bit about pro. As a pro, like, do you feel like you were like a better basketball player when you're playing pro? You can just focus strictly on basketball and like recovery, all stuff. Like when you're in college, you also have to you have the stress of academics and focusing on studying for this exam as well as trying to win the game. So how much do you think like playing pro basketball, you might have maybe felt like you're a better player because you didn't have to worry about some of the stresses that a college would face?
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier, to be honest, when you go the professional route, because now it's your job. Now, when you're in college, you're an athlete first, and I don't care what anybody says. You're an athlete first that has to make the grades in order to continue playing. So, I've taken tests on planes. We had study hall when we're at the hotels, and one some of the hardest things to do is you have a big Monday game and you have the late game, and you fly back and you got class 8:00 in the morning, and you got back at 2. And so that makes it tough to wake up not only the next day, but to continue to kind of recover from that game, get your treatments. And of course, then you got to go back to the drawing board for the next game that's coming up in a few days. So, flipping to the professional side of things, it's all the basketball, all the training, all the weights, all the recovery that you need. And you can really dedicate some time for it because, again, that is your job.
Mm-hmm. You did mention earlier you were kind of shell-shocked, a little surprised, 10, 11-hour trips. What is like the atmosphere like in these different countries? And are these like hotel rooms and places that you stayed at, were they like really in well-kept condition? Like, I'm curious about that.
No. So, and I guess I kind of painted a bad picture, but the travel side of it was the part that I didn't like. We stayed in nice hotels. The planes were nice. The atmosphere for the games was amazing. The thing that I had to kind of get used to, especially over in Greece, is that you could at that point in time, I'm not sure if it's still going on now, but you could smoke cigarettes inside the stadium. And so that made it tougher. You walk in, you're like, well, shit, it smells like cigarette smoke in here. What is going on? And so, and I'll tell you guys another story too, but, it was, the atmosphere is amazing because you got people that love their team. It's like literally for every European team that's over there, their fans are equivalent to Dallas Cowboy fans. And you know how everybody hates. I mean, I'm a Cowboys fan, but everybody hates the Dallas Cowboys fans because of the way they act. Just put that on every European team's fans, and that's how they act towards their team, which makes it a fun environment to play in. I don't know if you guys have ever watched a soccer game, but you know how the people on the bench have that covering that covers, as on the bench. That was the first that I had saw that in basketball, because like the fans may get a little upset. They may start throwing stuff at you. I remember one time we had a game and at halftime, the other were like throwing full meters at us. We're like, what is going on? You know what I'm saying? So it's a different environment. Didn't understand, the whistling at first. Like if you ever go to a European game and you start hearing a lot of whistling, that's not a good thing. That's their equivalent to a boo. You're getting booed if they're whistling at you. The other biggest shock that I had, and we actually did a story over there. I had to do like an interview because it was again a big shocker. Is that a lot of, especially in Italy, a lot of my teammates smoked like cigarettes. And going back to the long bus rides, every time that we would break, let's say that we were on a 5-hour, 6-hour bus ride or even longer, if we had a break, bathroom break, snack break, or anything like that, stop at a gas station, some of my teammates would literally get off the bus and light one up. And again, you're like, you're supposed to be like some fine-tuned athlete. I was physically prepared, the strongest I had ever been in my career, and then I'm watching my teammates just get off the bus and light one up, and then they would go out and like play really
well. Len Dawson, when he after the Super Bowl, he lit one up in the locker room.
Yeah, and so the press would ask me, before and after games, hey, is this, very, very culturally different, or is this something that you guys experience in the States? We're like, yeah, no, we don't smoke cigarettes before the games.
Moving now over to the start of your basketball career, everything's been kind of local for you. You're having your career in real estate in Texas, and that's where you grew up. You grew up in Round Rock, Texas, and you went to high school at McNeil High School. How, I guess, was the type of basketball that you played in Texas, like, was that really competitive? How did all that go down? Because I know there's so much different types of high school basketball across the country. Different parts in the East Coast, different parts in the West Coast, and then in the Southwest for you guys.
I talk a lot of mess about it now because I don't think it is as competitive as people say it is. But when I was playing, it was like, either you were winning or you were the next guy that was coming right after you. Trying to take your spot. And I think that's what kind of drove us. I don't know if you guys know a lot about Texas basketball, but growing up playing, you had people like C.J. Miles, Curtis Gerald, Byron Eaton. A lot of people, Henry Dugat. There's a lot of people that came out of Texas that made it very competitive, especially on the AAU circuit, and then going into the camp, because you would see the same people over and over again, especially if it was an invitational type of camp. You're seeing the same people over and over again. And with you guys being from that Kansas area, Lawrence area, me and Mario Chalmers literally would be at every camp together, and we were always either roommates or always on the opposing team, playing against each other. So a lot of times people don't realize that when you go off to college is that we've played against these people so many times, so it's not anything that we've played in the AAU circuit with them, going to camps, and so it's more so like, all right, cool, you play for who now? All right, we'll see you, we'll play. Yeah. I think it's more exciting for the fans to actually see the matchup, but it's like, yeah, we've been matching up for quite some time now. It's not a huge deal for us. But just to kind of, talk about the landscape of Texas basketball, it's, Texas is a huge state. And so that means there's a lot of basketball players, and a lot of basketball players means there's a lot of tournaments, and a lot of tournaments mean there's a lot of competition. So, obviously you want to play against the best, and, if someone gets the best of you, you're hoping for the next tournament to roll around as quickly as possible so you can get them back. And, me personally, I literally would fluctuate between being the number one player in the state and being the number two player in the state, and it would be all indicative of if I had a good tournament or not, a good AAU tournament. And if that person had a good one, the next ranking that would come out, they would be number one. And if I had a good one, I would be number one. And that's how it would fluctuate and how competitive it would be.
You were is it still correct that you're the all-time leading scorer at your high school?
Yeah, that's not going to work. That's not going to be broken anytime soon.
You had you had almost 2,600 career points. So was, Rick Barnes was the coach at Texas when you were there. How many schools were recruiting you? I mean, obviously, you went to Texas in your own home state, but was there a lot more national exposure? Were there Kansas is not too far from you guys. How many schools were kind of offering you scholarship?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a funny story about what happened with me in Kansas. But so my friends pretty much begged me, and again, I don't know why, they just liked Pitino at the time, but they begged me to go to Louisville, and I was like, bro, I'm good. I don't want to go that far. I'm okay. I'll stay here. I got my first kind of quote unquote offer in 7th grade from Florida, right? And it was coming back from an AAU tournament that we had played in, and actually it was in that. Was it Disney World, that campus that where the bubble was?
The worldwide leader of worldwide sports. Yeah.
Yeah. And so again, at 7th grade, I didn't think much about it. I didn't really care. I was just like, all right, that's cool. And that was literally the end of it. I didn't really think much about it. And then when it started getting a little bit more serious, Ohio State was a kind of a big one. Louisville, but I tell people at Texas all the time, I was like, yo, I had to be your easiest recruit because one, I committed to Texas when I was a sophomore, right? And so that made it a lot easier for me because I'm like, all right, cool, I already know where I'm going to college. That takes a lot of pressure. I'm good. I get to go hoop and not worry about the next level because I already got that figured out. However, I should say however. So I made it easy for myself because unlike a lot of, the players now, and even when I was growing up, I really wasn't a huge fan of attention, that wasn't actually on the court. If it was off the court, I was a person don't talk to me, I'm fine. I just happen to be somewhat good at basketball, and that's probably the only reason that you want to talk to me. So I'm good. And so being that type of person, I didn't really want the attention. So when Texas, pretty much offered me, and I wanted to go there, it would be a good situation because it's literally 20 minutes away from where I grew up. My parents could come watch me. I jumped on it, but it made it an easy decision for me. And so that kind of shut down a lot of my recruiting because if anybody would call, I didn't entertain it. I would just say, hey, I'm good with Texas, so, best of luck to you. Now, this is where you guys will kind of like this story. I don't know if you guys remember the coach at Kansas. His name was Jankowski or something like that. You guys remember him?
I think he's SMU's coach at one point.
Jankovic?
Something like that.
Jankovic.
Yeah. He called me, and he knew me and Mario were really good. We were really good friends at the time. And obviously the year that we came in, Kansas had a lot of people leaving. House was leaving, I believe, at the time, and they were going to be really guard empty. And I had committed for when I was a sophomore. So you're fast forwarding to my senior year, and egos start coming out a little bit because obviously I committed sophomore, and didn't really require a lot of effort. I'm like, hey, yeah, I'll be there. We're good. But it started becoming to the point where I'm like, all right, guys, just because I told you I was coming here, I haven't signed anything yet. You still gotta court me a little bit. You still gotta act like you want me a little bit, and not make it as easy as I just made it for you guys. And so Kansas started calling, and I literally called all the coaches down there, and I said, hey, Kansas keeps calling me, and I'm starting to entertain it simply because y'all are kind of just writing me off as as a shoe-in, which obviously I wanted to go there, but again, I felt that I still needed to be courted a little bit because it wasn't like I was a scrub. I was 1 and 2 player in the state, leading my team to to regional finals and things like that. And if you looked at my team on paper, we should not have done anything good. We didn't have like a very dominating roster. And so the funny thing is, as soon as I made that phone call to them, we had a game the next day, and literally, who do I see walk in and go sit down behind the bench? Rick Barnes. I was like, okay, thank you. Just show me a little bit of attention, and I'll be good. Just stroke my ego every 6 months or so, And so after he did that, I was like, all right, bro, thank you. And, I shut down all the Kansas stuff. And then at that point in time, it was time to, do the sign your letter of intent and all that good stuff. And so, yeah, then it's kind of done, said and done after that.
Interesting. Okay. I think, I don't know, I think what you kind of said now is, I don't know, maybe different than high school recruits now. Like, there's a lot of top players that will maybe entertain, 6 to 10 schools, and you'll see them, put, thanks to, thanks Kansas State, Iowa State, and they just have like kind of like an open mind
all these
for
schools
all these
lined
teams.
up.
Yeah. But it seems like
and
it's
a surprise. It's a surprise to the school when they actually make the decision. I'm like, this can't be fair.
Both Sam and I are interested in, like, once you committed to Texas, you're about to start your freshman season. 2016 that you were a freshman on was loaded as heck. It had PJ Tucker, who is still in the NBA right now, LaMarcus Aldridge, who just retired a couple of days ago, and he had, a really dang good career in the NBA. Just kind of like, when you got there, like, how did it feel? Like, man, I'm playing with 2 really good guys on this team right off the bat.
So that's kind of like the fan mindset. As a player, you don't have that mindset whatsoever. You're going in there thinking like, all right, what do I got to do to get on the court? And for me, again, you guys obviously saw me as a freshman and saw that I wasn't some dominating specimen that would walk in. I wasn't 6'5", 225 or anything like that. So my whole mindset was like, all right, cool. What do I got to do to get on the court and actually show? Because a lot of people had already written me off, and they had designated me, quote unquote, hometown kid. I can't tell you how many times I heard, oh, the only reason you're going to Texas is because you're from Boston. And I'm like, okay, let's prove a few people wrong right here, simply because that's not true. Otherwise, I don't think they're going to waste a scholarship just because I'm the hometown kid. So it wasn't, the biggest person that helped me kind of get going was Daniel Gibson. And he was the one that everybody was like, well, why are you going to go there? You're going to have to play behind Daniel. And my mindset, again, is a little different than a lot of these players back then and a lot of players now, because they want to be guaranteed a starting job. Otherwise, they're not going to the school, which I think is pretty much the weakest mindset ever. You want something spoon-fed to you or just handed to you without even having to earn it. And that wasn't me. That's not how I grew up. That's not how I got to the University of Texas. That's not how, my whole high school career went. It was like, all right, I got to put the work in to actually get to where I want to be. And being told that I really wasn't going to play simply because there was a lot of players there, you kind of hold on to that and use it on a daily basis to, 1, get better, 2, learn, because there's a huge difference from high school to college, which is why you see a lot of people that are McDonald's All-American, in high school, their game doesn't really translate right away in the college level simply because it's a whole different game. And so you're learning a lot, and you're trying to still be competitive and earn your stripes, so to speak. And so that's kind of what I did. It was, got a chance to talk to Daniel, who was my roommate, my freshman year, and just learning about the game, learning about the differences from high school to college. And so it wasn't more so kind of being shell shocked as far as being, oh my God, I get to play with these guys. It was like, no. How do I get to fit in with these guys on the court so we can actually make it, the Texas team that people can fear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then a question about like translating from high school to college. Do you think the fact that you're pretty much your 3-point shooting was like probably your best strength as a player, did that make it like super easier for you to translate from high school to college? Like I see some of these like McDonald's All-Americans who rely on athleticism, and their 3-point shot really isn't there, so they kind of have a little bit of a hard time. Do you think your ability to shoot made it a little bit easier for you to transition?
Yeah, I'm not going to say just the ability to shoot. I'm going to say the actual skill and fundamentals. So there's a very vast difference of being an athletic player and being a true basketball player. You know, there's a lot of people that get hung up on that he's such a good athlete, you know, but how does he think? Can he outthink his opponent? Is he skilled enough to actually be able to, you know, read cuts, read screens, you know, read the defense? You know, all that stuff that people really don't think about because it's the non-sexy stuff that goes along with being a good basketball player. And I think that's what allowed me to kind of separate myself or not even separate, but just kind of make the transition a little bit easier, because my high school career was a totally different player than what I did in college. Like, I didn't come running off screens and, you know, an off-the-ball player in high school. I was the point guard that scored. So I was coming off playing one-on-one, coming off pick and roll, doing all that stuff. When I got to college, you know, I was thrust into a role based off of the style of play that we had. And again, you want to figure out, because I was a scorer, I wanted to figure out how I could score. And that was what the scheme of our offense was. It was, you know, move the ball, find the open player. And, you know, you figure out, all right, cool. If I learn how to read these screens, come off down screens, come off pop screens, like this stuff, you know, that's how I can get open shots. And so that's what I had to learn, because I didn't do that in high school. That was something that, you know, that had to be learned. But the actual skill set of being able to shoot the basketball and being a little bit smarter than a lot of the other court, I think that's what helped, as opposed to just kind of being an athlete who just goes out there and, you know, kind of just relies on athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the things I remember about you was your release was so quick. How does a player develop that quickness on their shot to be able to get it off as quick as possible to avoid getting it blocked?
It's so a lot of people think it has to do with like your actual release itself, and it's not. Even a lot of people said, "Oh, you had a quick release," just like you said, and it was like, no, my footwork, which is way better than everybody else's. You know, so my footwork, and getting to the place that I needed to be, and having my feet ready to go to get the shot off, allowed for the quick release, because I was always ready to shoot. If you go look at people that come off screens or come off ball screens or down screens, if with or without the ball, their footwork is so terrible. That's why their shot is so slow, because they're having to gather their feet, and it takes so long for it to get together that their defender catches up. Mm-hmm. So if you go back and watch people that have really good footwork, that's why they're able to get their shot off. It has nothing to do with, you know, how fast I got from the shot pocket up to the release. It was just like I was always, you know, my footwork was always ready to go, and putting myself in a position to get the shot off.
Which player, when you were, you know, in high school and maybe early stages of college, which player that like that played in the NBA did you kind of watch and try to emulate like that footwork? Like Ray Allen was probably at the time maybe the guy that was probably the best at it.
Yeah.
Did you kind of emulate Ray Allen, or?
It was him. So for my size, I was a really big AI fan, but our games were not similar whatsoever. I just liked him because of his toughness and that he was able to do the things that he did at the size that he was at, which is the size that I was at. You know, our games were not similar whatsoever. So if we're thinking about, you know, in high school, yes, I was trying to emulate that, or more so of a person that could get their shot off by playing one-on-one. When I got to college, it was, you know, going with the actual scheme for what our offense entailed. It was, all right, you know, look at a Ray Allen. Let's go look and see how he's getting his footwork together to get his shot off, because everybody says Ray Allen has a quick release as well. But if you go back and look, one of the most iconic shots that he has is when he's with the Miami and he's backpedaling from a pass for Chris Bosh to tie the game up, I believe, or take it into overtime. It was all footwork. You know, you tell me what person can backpedal, stop, pop, and shoot the ball. That has nothing to do with the release. You know, that's all footwork. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I took away from watching him. And it's kind of, you know, it's not ironic that you brought him up, but that's the person that I was looking at simply because he was the person that, early on in his career, a lot of people don't know this, but Ray Allen was dunking on people. He was playing a lot of one-on-one, but then when he started getting older, he had to change his game up a little bit and start coming off screens and, coming a shooter that way.
Well, another comparison I'd like to another reason why I kind of make that Ray Allen comparison is both of you guys played with a shooting sleeve when you guys played. I love the shooting sleeve that you wore at Texas.
Bro, it was. I still get people that will walk up to me, and some still know my name, and some were like, "Hey, I know your face," and I'm like, "Are you sure?" You're like, "Yeah, you played at Texas." And before I can say yeah, they'll tell me, "Man, I love what you did with your shooting sleeve. You were the first one to have a two-tone shooting sleeve." Because I had the orange and white one, right? And I was like, "Yeah, that was me."
What was your first impression of KD when he first got onto Texas campus and you got to practice with him for the first time?
Well, a lot of people don't know that KD didn't come right away to Texas. So a lot when you start school, the basketball team starts in the summer. We all have to take all have to take summer school classes, and that's when we start doing the individual workouts and things like that, so we can kind of start, one, getting ready for the season, and two, learning each other. But KD didn't come in until the summer was almost over. He had some stuff to do back in Maryland, I believe, and he didn't come in right away. And so we didn't really get a chance to, gel with him right away. And to be honest, I don't know if it was ignorance on my part, but I had no idea who he was. I knew we were getting a big name recruit, but when you're going through the trenches of a college basketball season, there's not much time to think about or go watch a high school basketball game, because you're either watching film for your personal basketball games that you're playing, or you're studying, or you're on the court. So there really wasn't a lot of time. So I had really never seen him play. And I don't know if anybody else had, but that was my experience, when hearing about him. I just know that everybody said he was going to be good, which I was like, all right, cool. We got a good player coming in. That's always good, And then when he finally got here, everybody's first reaction was, because KD was really, really skinny at the point in time, but could really play basketball, was really, really good at basketball. And so everybody was like, yeah, is he going to be able to last the entire season? Because it gets real physical playing this game. But obviously, we all saw it. He was able to hold his own, and he got stronger throughout the season because he lived in the weight room. He worked with Coach Todd, religiously, making sure that he was ready to take the physical beating that he was about to take, because our offense kind of ran through him. And so I think what helped him a lot was me and DJ helped him a lot, because they couldn't really leave us. Otherwise, we would shoot it, we had some really good percentages. So that kind of freed up a lot of space for him to go to work. And he spent a lot of time in the post where, perfecting that turnaround jumper that he shot in college. Doesn't really do it a ton now, but that's kind of where he lived for our offense, and kind of running it through him.
Yeah, definitely. It's such an incredible talent. Like, watching him in college, you just knew that he was going to be like something in the NBA, and he definitely has lived up to that hype. I got one game. I just remember the game at Allen Fieldhouse in 2007. KD just goes off in the first half.
Yeah.
What was it like playing in that game, and what was it like just seeing KD just have like such a memorable game that day?
It's when you go into Fog Allen, of course you've heard all the stories of how it's a wonderful place to play and the fans get into it. So that was my sophomore year, and so at that point in time, we only played these teams in the Big 12 North once a year. So my freshman year, we didn't play Kansas at Kansas. Mm-hmm. Kansas came to Texas, and so of course the following year. So this is everybody's first time. That was that came in last year. This was their first time in Fog Allen, and of course the freshmen that came in this year, this was their first time at Fog Allen as well. And it's a unique experience, because again, you go in and you witness in all the historical aspects about it, and you get a little shell shock as you walk in. As you start warming up and the game gets going, obviously that fades away. But you're like, oh, we're at Fall Allen, as soon as you walk in. But the game itself, you could kind of sense that when he hit his first couple of jumpers, it was like, oh, they may be in for a long night. Honestly, I think he got hurt that game for a little bit and had to leave.
Yeah, he had that ankle. I think it was like an ankle problem in the second half.
Yeah, and then he came back, I believe. But watching, especially someone at that age, and it goes back to what I mentioned before. Everybody that's an All-American in high school, sometimes their game doesn't translate, especially in a hostile environment of a Fog Allen. And KD never really seemed fazed by it. And I think what helped him is that we had some really tough, grueling practices. I remember my freshman year. Rick Barnes made me play defense for the entire 3 hours. And he was like, yeah, we know you can score, but you're going to learn how to play defense. I was like, all right, cool. That's fine. And so literally, for 3 hours, I'm playing defense. And, you fast forward to, and at that, let me back up. At that point in time, Rick Barnes, I guess, was motivated because he finally reneged on that statement my senior year. But he goes, AJ, you're the worst defensive player I've ever seen. I was like, yeah, that can't be true because I'm not that bad. I get steals, that's what I'm thinking. And then so you fast forward to KD's freshman year, and KD didn't really like playing defense, or he didn't do it a lot, and coach called him out, and in the practice and in the film room. And so in the film room, he was just going at KD. And I don't think this is the first time that KD had ever been not quote unquote yelled at, but just kind of got on. And you could see it was written all over his face when practice started. And coach noticed it as well, stops the practice and says, AJ, tell KD that it can get a lot worse for him. I was like, okay, what do you want me to tell him? Like, are you going to put him on defense for 3 hours like you did me? So I had to go over and tell KD, he's like, yo, bro, it's fine. Just, put effort on defense and he'll leave you alone.
Yeah, wow. That's really, really cool to hear. What team did you have the most success against when you played, and what was like the thing that you just felt like, oh, this opponent we're playing against, I just feel that vibe, I guess.
I'll tell you the team that did not have a lot of success against, and that was A&M. But I have no clue why. I don't think I ever had a good game against A&M, but especially if it was at A&M, and it wasn't because it was, it wasn't like a huge hostile environment. It wasn't the loudest place you played in, but I don't know I never had a good game at A&M. But the team that, I was like, all right, I know I'm going to have a good game tonight. And I think it was because of the Austin rivalry that was kind of built up was against Baylor. I don't know if I was always super juiced to play them, but they had a guard, Curtis Geralds, that was from Austin as well. And we played against each other so much in high school and, AAU, and even we played on the same AAU team a couple times. And so I don't know if I was extra juiced to play them, but I literally always had a good game against Baylor.
Yeah. Who was the toughest player you had to guard, and then who was the toughest defender you had to face?
The toughest. It's an easy question. It's not even in the Big 12. It's Derrick Rose when we played Memphis in the Elite Eight. You kind of underestimate. Well, not underestimate, but everybody's saying that he's super athletic, and until you get to experience how athletic he is, it kind of gets downplayed. And we talked about before that quick release, and I talked about the footwork and everything. I got a pass in that game on the wing, wide open. And that's literally cash money for me. A wide open shot, and literally out of nowhere, here comes Derrick Rose, and he blocks my shot. And I'm like, oh. All right, didn't see you coming there, bro. All right, So I would say the best player, or the toughest player, would by far, just in terms of athleticism, would be Derrick Rose.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of mentioned Derrick Rose because that's kind of a segue to maybe your junior season. Both Sam and I have asked you questions about freshman and sophomore season, but statistically, that was, I think, your best season. In 2008, you averaged 16 points a game. You were named All Big 12 second team. Your freshman season, you had PJ Tucker, LaMarcus Aldridge, and then obviously Durant, but he was only there for 1 year. He left. 2008 kind of seemed like it was you and DJ Augustine's team, and
yeah, And we were juiced about that.
Yeah. And I know from Sam and I, we've obviously watched you go to battle with Kansas. You and Kansas had just 3 straight years of just constant battles in the Big 12 tournament. You guys were loaded. I mean, I think the 2008 Texas team was probably one of the best teams that Rick Barnes put together.
I agree.
I mean, I know you did that loss to Memphis in the Elite Eight, and that was, I think, your second. I mean, I don't want to bring back bad memories, but I mean, you guys did make it to 2 Elite Eights in 3 years. So, kind of just talk a little bit about that 2008 season.
It was a season that we were guard heavy, and Rick Rick put a game plan together that allowed me and DJ to kind of roam and do what we did. We gave other schools the hardest time and looking at film or scouting us is because we would literally just do random ball screens or just random down screens. We didn't really have an offense. We had a lot of smart players that year. It was all feel. I mean, if you go back and look at it, we rarely called a set play. It was all freelance and just reading our defenders and and making plays out of that way. And I think that's what kind of allowed us to be a pretty good team that year, is because we got to use our instincts and got to be able to read the defenses, and we were all intelligent enough and had the skills enough to read it and make the proper plays. And so going into the season, me and DJ, it was a really good feeling because DJ knew that was our second year of playing together. So now DJ knows where I'm going to be. He knows my tendencies. We kind of fed off each other, and we had a big man inside that, Connor and Dexter and even Damian James that would, take a lot of pressure off of, the outside scoring because they had to worry about, spinning them inside.
How big of a load was Dexter Pittman in the paint?
When he was fresh, he was a really big load. But the problem with Dex is that he would only be able to go up and down the court a few different times, and then we had to sub him out. So, but when he finally got that right. He worked on his conditioning quite a bit for the following year, and we used him quite a bit. But it was, for him getting going, it was more about conditioning because if he was fresh, nobody could stop him. It was just the point of how many times could we run up and down the court with him, and then he gets tired, and then he starts making mental errors because everybody makes mental errors when you get tired.
Mm-hmm. I knew as soon as we did this podcast with you, I was just gonna have all this nostalgia of watching all these former Texas players that I watched on TV. Oh man, yeah, that's who. I mean, I remember a lot of these guys, like Damian James, Dexter Pittman, Connor Atchley. You remember, but the 2009 season was your last season that you played at Texas. Yeah. You ended up breaking the Big 12 career record for 3-pointers with 389. Lasdarius Dunn actually is second from Baylor. Was Dunn from Texas as well?
I believe so.
Yeah.
No, Dunn. I think Lace wasn't he from New Orleans? Or was that Tweedy?
I think so. I feel like Lasdarius was from New Orleans.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but nonetheless, he was one that could really shoot it. And he could fill it up.
You also finished 11th in the conference, and this is all the time in points. With all that being said, I mean, I know Sam kind of asked you, the toughest player that you had to guard was, and you said Derrick Rose. Any player, considering you played some of these teams, like the Big 12 South teams, twice in one season, who was maybe the toughest guard that you had to play, or just player you had to play against within the Big 12 conference? I mean, Lasdarius Dunn's a name that we just mentioned.
Lace is one, but I really didn't have to match up with him. So, again, going back to that Austin rivalry that I had, Curtis Geralds was a really, really big guard. He's actually still playing. He's doing really well for himself over in Europe, and he actually had a little stint in the NBA as well. But he was a very thick guard with very, very good handles, and it was very tough to stay in front of him. And of course, growing up in Austin, it made it, one, we know each other, so it's not like we're going to be surprised by anything that we do. And so that was one. And you guys tell me again, who was the other guard besides Mario? I think his last name was Russell.
Russell Robinson.
Yeah, Russell Robinson. His arms were so long that you're like, man, how are you here? You know, and so he was another person that, you know, from an offensive standpoint, if he's guarding you, you really got to, one, take care of the ball and, you know, be on the lookout because he had really good defensive instincts. And so, again, he was only he was the person that we would only play once a year. Obviously, we were playing him twice a year because he was either, you know, playing him in the regular season, and then, you know, at that point in time, we would always match up in the Big 12 championship game. Mm-hmm. So it was him. And then, believe it or not, if Texas Tech is a really just tough team to play in general. One, because you really didn't get too amped up to play them because, you know, it's Texas Tech at that time. And their offense was just so, it was literally, they would just run in circles and until somebody got open. I mean, you guys literally go back and watch some film on Texas Tech. They would literally just sit in the paint, start circling until somebody got open. And you're like, you don't want to guard this, you know? Nobody wants to run in circles and guard this. And so just from a team standpoint, and we had to play those guys twice a year, it was, you know, they were just a tough team to play in general.
Do you have any memories playing against when Bobby Knight was coaching at Texas Tech?
Was that so? I may have to ask you that. Was he coaching when I played?
Yeah, so it would have been your freshman, sophomore year. I think I want to say he retired in the middle of the year, and his son Pat took over from your last 2 years.
So honestly, I don't remember, but I'll tell you the person that I do remember. It was my freshman year, and it was Coach K. So we were number 2. Duke was number 1. That was when J.J. Redick was there. They also had Sean Dockery, Sheldon Williams inside, and the other point guard. He was my age, Greg Paulus. I don't know if you guys remember him.
Yeah, but, Greg Paulus played like football at Syracuse for a year.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, obviously you hear a lot about Duke. Especially if you're in the basketball world, you're you know, everybody talks about Duke. If you're Dick Vitale, that's the only team that he ever really talks about anyway. You know, and it's not a bad thing. You know, they're always good, so I'm not hating on Dick Vitale for that. But it's just like that's the only team he ever talks about. And so, you know, they get a lot of press, and of course, Coach K is like the catalyst behind that. And so, you know, freshman year we played Duke in the Meadowlands, and of course they made it as if it was a Final Four game. This is the only game ever that when the starting lineups were introduced, we all went to half court and shook each other's hand. We're like, yo, this is like the 4th game of the season. What are we doing? And they made it like it was the national championship game because it was 1 versus 2. And again, they made it as if it was such a big deal. It was the first time that Texas had ever wore black jerseys. You know, we go out there and I think we get smacked by like 20.
Yeah, J.J. Redick had 41.
Like 40. Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, going back to the whole point of the story is that, you know, the coach that, you know, kind of embodies what college basketball, when you think about college basketball, you think about Coach K. And you're like walking through the line to shake his hand, say good game. You're like, oh shit, it's Coach K. You know?
Oh my God. I was gonna ask, like, I guess best and worst venues that you had to play, that you had to travel to when you were at Texas.
Texas Tech is the worst, and I'm sorry if anybody's listening to this that's being recruited by Texas Tech. It's just nothing is out there. Like you go there and it's like a pile of dust, and then you want to leave as quickly as you can to get out of there, just because there's really nothing to do but other than go to the hotel and go to the gym. You know, and the way that their stadium was set up at the time, it just wasn't loud. And I'll be honest, I didn't really like home games either because our stadium is just too big. Obviously, I know they're building another one right now, but the Frank Irwin Center, you know, holds 16,000 people, and at that point in time, we were filling it up. It just wasn't loud because it was too big. And so honestly, I never thought we had a real home court advantage, as you know, if we're hosting a Kansas, or if we're hosting an Oklahoma State or anybody like that, or Oklahoma. I don't really feel like we ever had a home court advantage, just because it was full, but it wasn't loud, so there was really no intimidation factor. But on the other hand, one of the hardest places to play is Oklahoma State, because the building literally just goes straight up, and the fans are pretty much on the court, and it's so loud that, you know, during a timeout, if we're all huddled together, you still can't hear the person talking because it's so loud in there. When you're talking about a home court advantage, that's what helps, because now you're distracting the other team from being able to get their game plan because we can't hear each other.
Historic Gallagher-Iba.
Yep.
Yeah. The game I think about, I think in your career at Oklahoma State, was the game when Byron Eaton made that ridiculous shot, he was trying to save it, and he just it up and it just somehow went in.
And I tell you what, whenever you see that on the court, you're like, no, okay, it's just not our night. We're not supposed
to win. Any neutral court, because you guys had games that were played in December or November, during the holidays, where you played on a neutral court, or even maybe in the NCAA tournament, any of those arenas that you didn't like?
Not that I didn't like. Well, you know what? We played Gonzaga. I believe we played them in Phoenix. I didn't really like it there, and I don't know if it was. I think it's where the Phoenix Suns played, but they had. I guess they have an ice hockey team. I don't know, but the ice was right underneath the court, and it was just so cold the entire time. I was like, bro, we need to start this game over, or they need to get rid of this ice or something, because it's just too damn cold in here. And you're warming up for a long period of time before the game even starts, and I had the hardest time getting warm there because of that ice that was under there. But I'll tell you the best place, and obviously it sounds cliche, but anytime you get to go play at Madison Square Garden, that's always a plus, because now you're getting that East Coast audience. It's probably going to be a primetime game, and the game that stands out for me, I believe it was my senior year, when we played Villanova, and the only reason that it stands out is because Steph Curry and Davidson played the game before us. And at that point in time, you're looking at Steph. He's getting a lot of hype from the tournament that he had the year before. And so even Rick Barnes comes up to me and says, you better play better than Steph tonight. I was like, we're not even playing them. What are you talking about? But at the same time, I knew that. And so we're watching the game. I think Steph had 26 that night or something, 24 that night. And so we go in and play Villanova. I'm like, all right, cool. I got to get at least 26. I think I had 28, 26, 28, something like that. I think I won the battle that he probably didn't even know we had, but my coach challenged me, and that's the game that kind of stands out, because we won. We beat Scotty Reynolds and Villanova at that point in time, and especially doing it in Madison Square Garden, it's always a good one.
Yeah. What was it like? What was the Red River rivalry like as a Texas player?
It wasn't as heated as the football rivalry, and it's because we had to play each other twice a year. And so it was always kind of like if you lost the first one, you could always kind of redeem yourself. Oklahoma is one of those places too that it was a very big building, so to speak, and it may not even been that big, but the way that it was set up, it wasn't as loud as you would hope it for it to be, especially in that type of because at that point in time, Oklahoma was really good. Texas was really good. Oklahoma was really good. Even before Blake Griffin got there, they had some pretty good teams, and so we had some pretty good battles. But you're going back and forth at each other's stadium, and you want it to be such a rocking environment, or where it's it's chaos, and you really didn't get that. And I know fans are probably going to hate me for saying this, but it just wasn't as loud as they think that it is when you're actually playing, in those arenas. But for the actual rivalry itself, you want to win, because a lot of times Oklahoma has a lot of players from Texas, and you're like, okay, cool, you chose to go to Oklahoma, but you're from Texas, so don't act like you're from Oklahoma, And so that's kind of like where the rivalry would come from. And of course, when you go to an Oklahoma, when you go to a Texas, you're automatically told to hate at that point in time A&M, and you're told to hate Oklahoma. So you just kind of get indoctrinated into it, or adopted into it, to make sure that you uphold that rivalry.
At least from what you're telling me, Texas A&M was more of a bigger rival in basketball than Oklahoma.
Yeah, I would say so. And A&M is, it was just kind of a weird dynamic, because there was a lot of people that played at A&M that wanted to come to Texas, and so they felt slighted that Texas didn't grab them. And so of course, when it's time to play, they want to go out and try to show why Texas should have grabbed them, or Texas should have recruited them harder. And so that was the whole dynamic behind that. So it became more of a rivalry, and that's in the basketball world as opposed to the Red River rivalry with Oklahoma.
What was your most memorable game in your career at Texas? Whether it's like a great game you had, or just like an incredible team win that you guys were able to pull off.
The easiest one is my freshman year against West Virginia. Obviously, that's when Kenton Paulino hit the game winner. For me, if you look at it, for me as a freshman to still be in the game and have enough trust from the coaching staff to keep me in the game, down, not even tied up or not even ahead, to trust me to be the person that brings the ball down the court and to make the right play. That always stands out. Obviously, that worked out in our favor when he hit that that game winner against West Virginia. And again, I've mentioned this already, but the other one that kind of stands out for me is when we played Villanova, because it was in the Garden, and it's always a really good environment to play in. But also in that same year, my senior year, we got to go to Maui. Every 4 years, you get to go to a different type of tournament, whether it's the Bahamas or Maui or something like that. So it wasn't just so going to Maui to play. Watching basketball, you go and look at. In high school, you're looking at all the preseason tournaments and postseason tournaments, and one of the ones that stands out is the Maui Classic. And to be a part of it, that's always it was always a fun thing to do. To know that we got to play in the Maui Classic.
Yeah. Maui's definitely my favorite regular season Thanksgiving week tournament. I like the rims there. It feels like it's like soft, and like the games are really high scoring. I'd say one of the games I remember from your 4 years that was probably memorable for me was your guys' win against Texas A&M your sophomore year. I think it was a triple overtime game. I remember AJ Law just kept draining threes after threes, and it made it very difficult. They wouldn't let you guys get that win easily.
Yeah, I do remember that. It was after every overtime, you got your coach yelling at you, "It's all right, guys. You gotta want to be here all night." We're like, "Yeah, you're not the one out here running up and down the court right now."
I got a couple more questions about kind of let's talk about a little bit about training and basketball. How many shots did you make a day, and what were some drills that you're able to do to develop that footwork and to be able to shoot it with accuracy?
So a lot of people thought, that I was just shooting tons and tons of threes on a daily basis, and you could literally go ask anybody that knows how to shoot the basketball and is really good at it, that they don't practice a ton of threes. It's part of the actual repertoire, but it's not the actual workout itself. So you spend a lot of time inside the court, making sure that your fundamentals, making sure that your mechanics on your shot are on point. So it was more so staying inside the arc, setting cones up, coming off down screens, coming off fade screens, and making sure that your feet are doing the work that they're supposed to be doing to help you get the shot off as quickly as possible. And to answer your other question, I never was the guy that would sit there and even in high school, I didn't sit there and count shots or how many makes or how many misses. I wasn't the guy that, I hear this a lot. You always got to end on a make. I'm like, no, I'm good. That just means I got something. If I missed my last shot and the workout was over, I didn't try to go make it. I would tell myself, all right, cool. I got something to work on tomorrow. A lot of people want to make their last shot. I'm like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But I never did count. It was more so of, if I told myself, all right, I'm going to work out for an hour and a half today. I'm going to go hard for an hour and a half. And a lot of times what happens is people say they're in the gym for 5 or 6 hours a day. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's fine if you're actually going hard for 5 or 6 hours a day. But that just really wasn't the case. There's an intensity level that goes along with when you work out. And I was able to get that done in an hour and a half, versus what a lot of people would take 4 or 5 hours to do, simply because they would just be BSing around for a huge chunk of time. And so for me, it was like, all right, cool. My hour and a half is done, my 2 hours or my whatever time I set for myself that day. And, if I felt good about it, I would be done. If I did, then, you stay a little longer. but I didn't want to count shots to say, yes, I made 500 shots today, because it didn't matter if I didn't actually go hard and do the things I needed to work on. And if a shot didn't go in, it just doesn't. Sometimes it just doesn't go in. It doesn't matter that it didn't go in as long as I was doing the drill correctly.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah, when I was playing basketball, I did a lot of like spot up shooting drills, and I thought one of the things that helped me was I did a lot of like I like practicing off the dribble. I would like set a chair or a cone, and then just try to dribble and just like pull up, practice my jump shot, just practicing off the dribble, maybe doing like a crossover drill.
Yep. There's a lot of different things you can do, especially by yourself. You know, I think that's the beauty about basketball. You can toss the ball up, run to it, and catch it. You can go off the dribble. You can set chairs up. You can work on, turning down screens, going off screens with nobody there. You can just use cones or a chair, and you can obviously start using your imagination. If someone hedges hard, you're gonna split it, or if they're gonna stay, you drag them out and take the big men with you. You can put yourself in so many different scenarios, even though there's only one person that's in the gym that's working.
Yeah. And then my last question is, what would be your best advice to players that are in like high school who are looking to try to go D1 or just get a college basketball scholarship?
Learn the game. There's a lot of athletes out here right now, but there's not a lot of basketball players. And in my opinion right now, it would be so easy to separate yourself if you actually learn the game and can outthink someone. And what I mean by that is, being a step ahead of someone or the other team when it comes to breaking down plays. For example, if I'm coming off of a ball screen and I drive to the paint, who's the open man, or where's the quote unquote hockey assist coming from? If you start learning all that, you can start putting your teams in better positions to be successful. And a lot of people just, again, like I said before, rely on athleticism and don't make the right basketball play. And that's why, honestly, I have a hard time watching college basketball right now. It's because there's so many athletes, but not enough basketball players that actually have a skill level to understand the game. And so if you're a high school athlete that's really wanting to get to the next level, break down some film, break down, your position so that you can actually understand the role of what you do and how you can put your team in a better position. And that literally negates the athleticism when you can outthink someone, because now you're already one step ahead of them, and they can't, even though they may catch up because they're athletic, you're already past them and putting your team in a better position.
Sam asked a lot of questions, and you provide a lot of input. You did a really good job really recapping your whole Texas career, because for guys like Sam and I, we've grown up. We grew up watching you. We grew up watching you play on weeknights. We saw you play on Saturdays, and it just kind of really cool to actually talk to you and just kind of experience those moments. And a lot of these moments, like the Texas A&M triple overtime game or the game against Villanova in the Garden, like I remember watching those games, and it was cool that you were able to take us down kind of memory lane.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was awesome. I appreciate you guys, reaching out and allowing me to be on the show.
Thank you very much, AJ, for your time and your input and advice to young players out there. I'll definitely use this to help teach other younger players who are pursuing their goals in basketball.
Yeah, for sure. If I can help with anything in the future, guys, just let me know.
Yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time tonight, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man.